Good afternoon, class. I'm here today to inform all of you on some facts and myths of marijuana. I've researched several websites and have found several myths and facts about marijuana. This informative speech is a prelude to my final persuasive speech on legalizing marijuana at the federal level. I do not use marijuana, but do believe it should be legalized for different reasons. There's a lot of misinformation out there about marijuana, so I am breaking down some of those most persistent myths about the drug and giving you some real facts. Some of the questions that I will attempt to answer are: is pot prohibition working? Can casual use of marijuana lead to addiction? Does marijuana use cause cancer? Does marijuana use lead to crime and delinquency? Does marijuana use lead to dependence or addiction? Again, these are some of the questions that I want to try and answer for you. I would give you a demonstration, but again, I don't smoke marijuana, and I don't think we have time to see the effects of it on me. The first myth is marijuana prohibition effectively protects children. Prohibition didn't work for alcohol in the 20s and 30s and does not work for marijuana, therefore does not protect any children. Only parents can protect children. The Centers for Disease Control reports that use of marijuana by teenagers has hit a 30-year high, with 1 out of 15 school students smoking more marijuana than tobacco. So again, prohibition of marijuana is not working. Another myth: prisons are full of people for marijuana possession. There are about 750,000 people arrested every year for marijuana offenses in the United States. There's a lot of variation across states in what happens next, but not all arrests lead to prosecutions, and relatively few people prosecuted and convicted of simple possession end up in jail. Most are fined or placed in community supervision, or they do community service work. There are about 40,000 inmates of state and federal prisons have a current conviction involving marijuana, and about half of them are in for marijuana offenses alone. Most of these were involved in distribution. So most people in jail for marijuana are not in there for possession, they're in there for distribution of marijuana or the sale of marijuana. Less than 1% are in for possession alone. Another myth: marijuana use causes cancer. According to the Washington Post, it is true that marijuana smoke, like tobacco smoke, contain carcinogens. But even hardcore pot smokers typically consume much less pot than tobacco smokers do cigarettes. Probably not enough to cause cancer. In a 2006 UCLA study concluded that even heavy marijuana use does not lead to lung cancer. They hypothesized that there would be a positive association between marijuana use and lung cancer. What they found instead was no association at all, and even a suggestion of some protective effect. This and other studies suggest that pot can actually stop the growth of cancerous tumors. There are other ways to consume marijuana other than smoking. Another myth: using marijuana leads to crime and delinquency. Bill Green of the Boston Globe states that the rate of pot use is higher among offenders than non-offenders, but that definitely does not mean that pot causes criminal behavior. Another factor may be driving both results, or it could be that the casualty goes the other way, and criminals are just more likely to use drugs. Furthermore, pot, unlike alcohol, doesn't generally unleash aggression, so it's much harder to link marijuana to violent crime. Another myth: marijuana use leads to dependence and addiction. According to the National Institute of Health, it is possible to become dependent on marijuana, but this only happens in a small category of heavy users. Research suggests that about 9% of marijuana users become clinically dependent at some point. But that's compared to 15% of cocaine users and 24% of heroin users, which are much more dangerous drugs than marijuana. Another myth. Most pot smokers are heavy users. According to the Boston Globe, between 40 and 50% of people who have tried marijuana report a lifetime total of fewer than 12 days of use. That's in a lifetime, less than 12 days. About 1/3 of pot smokers report having used marijuana for 10 days or less in the past year. And about 6 million of America's 30 million users over the age of 12 use pot on a daily or almost daily basis, according to household surveys. 1/5 of those who say they have used marijuana in the past year. But they account for about 80% of all marijuana consumed. Another myth. Marijuana is a gateway drug. According to the Institute of Medicine, kids who use marijuana are statistically more likely to go on to use other drugs. But that doesn't mean marijuana use causes the use of other drugs. The same factors driving marijuana use probably explain the use of the other drugs as well. A report by the Institute of Medicine found no conclusive evidence that the drug effects of marijuana are linked to the subsequent abuse of other illicit drugs. Another myth. Marijuana is completely harmless. Well, we all know that it is not completely harmless. Just the smoke alone from it is not harmless. According to the National Institute of Health, heavy marijuana use can be harmful. Since pot smoke is chemically very similar to tobacco smoke, heavy pot smokers are at risk for some of the same health effects as cigarette smokers, like bronchitis, other respiratory illnesses. Again, the risks are from smoking, which isn't the only way to use marijuana. Another hazard is car accidents caused driving while high on marijuana, though that risk is lower than from drunk driving. And I believe that may be because less people smoke marijuana than drink. Okay, and the last myth, marijuana is a dangerous drug. According to the Journal of the American Medical Association, it is a fact that study after study has found that pot is less harmful than alcohol and tobacco, and of course, much less harmful than the hard drugs like cocaine and heroin. This informative speech was to share myths and truths about marijuana, and is a prelude to my final persuasive speech to legalize marijuana at the federal level. Thank you for your time.